and I want to ask for your top 5 Premier League strikers of all time.
Somebody else go first.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how we want to do this. Like, should we just go like 1 to 5 each, or do we want to do first and then
do
second?
it in order, or just giving our 5?
I'd say try do it in order as best you can. Obviously, some of them will be quite close. So who's your top striker of all time? I feel like we'll all agree on this
Rooney.
one. He's number 1.
He's number 1, yeah.
Bro, bias, mate.
I am nah.
I want to his point. Why Rooney?
Bro, this guy was unbelievable. He came on the scene at 16, banging goals for fun. The only reason he didn't break Shearer's record is because he decided that he wanted to drop in and play a deeper role and start playing a bit more. The guy was an unbelievable footballer as well as an unbelievable goal scorer. The guy was getting 30 goals a season for fun. He was an unbelievable player. And he's one of the most underrated players in Premier League history, in my opinion. I think he's the best striker in the Premier League. Genuinely, I do.
Yeah, he was a lot of fun to watch. Was Rooney? I really enjoyed him. He was tenacious, and especially when he went through his like skinhead period.
Yeah,
he was a beast. I really, he's in my top 5.
Yeah, he's
I
in my
wouldn't,
top
I wouldn't
5
put him
for
in
sure.
number
Yeah,
1.
he's in my top
put him
5,
number
but
1.
I'm actually baffled you put him at number 1. I can't lie.
He's United biased, mate.
I'm not.
Yeah, I
I'm
know.
not baffled. You're a Man U fan, and he was genuinely very exciting to watch, and he caused us a lot of problems.
He won everything at United. Every single club competition he played in, he won.
Yeah.
He won everything for United. And like I said, the only reason he did not break Shearer's record is because he dropped deeper. I mean, he's obviously lost it now, but he was England's top goal scorer of all time.
He knackered himself,
and United's top goals. He's still United's all-time top goal scorer.
But do you not think the fact that he didn't have that longevity to be able to play up front and break those records kind of says something in itself?
But I don't know if it was because he couldn't or he made the decision.
Well, surely
to
you
drop in.
would if you were still physically able to. You
He
would.
wasn't physically able to.
Yeah.
That's why he had to drop back.
Who's number 1 for you, Faz?
Henry. I'd have to say Henry.
Henry's the best ever.
Yeah, I think
Like with my list, I'm only going off by players that I've watched. So I never really watched Shearer.
Yeah.
So I'm not putting him up top 5 solely for that reason that I've not watched him.
Shearer got the goals, but like Henry just had the magic. He was.
Yeah, I'm
I think you ask a lot of pros as well who they'd put at the top. They would put Henry and Shearer. He was the first inductee into the Hall of Fame, and yeah, he just made me fall in love with Arsenal.
Yeah, I can't.
Same, man, same.
Henry was one of those players that kind of changed the way football was looked at as well. We mentioned this the other week, Josh. I think he's one of those players that changed his position a little bit.
Yeah,
And how strikers are meant to perform and can.
started on the left, didn't he?
Also, plus the fact, I know that we're talking about the Premier League, but Henry did it in overseas as well. He did it at Barcelona and absolutely smashed it there. I know he was more of a winger at Barcelona, but he was still...
He didn't hit the same levels as he did for Arsenal, but he still held his own, I feel a bit with Barcelona.
He stayed at Arsenal.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. So my number 1 was actually Shearer.
Fair.
Goals.
Yeah, just because he's got the record amount of goals. I think I like the way that he stayed at Newcastle for so long, like just between Newcastle and Blackburn, really. But also the fact I appreciate... Good cross there from Tottenham on the edge of the box. Awful shot, though. I appreciate the fact he doesn't have as many trophies as a lot of the other players or accolades, but he won the Golden Boot a number of times. He's the top scorer of all time in the Premier League, and he won the league with Blackburn.
Yeah.
Like the fact
There's
that...
something to be said about that, isn't there?
Yeah, winning the league, they're probably one of the last teams apart from Leicester outside of the top 4 or 5 teams to win it.
To win the league,
so the fact that he did that and he didn't sell his soul and just go to a United.
Loyal. Like Man United came in for him, didn't they? And he said no.
Yeah, and I do respect that. Tottenham on the edge of the box again here. It's gone from one end to the other. Thought he might have fumbled that for a second then. Seems like a game of massive counter-attack so far.
He's good, him though, Doggy. He's a good player.
He looks all right.
Yeah, he's solid.
So, Josh, who's your second best Premier League striker of all time?
Probably would be Henry. I don't know. I struggle with Henry, not because he's not a good player, but in my mind, Henry's a winger. So I don't know.
Do you think?
Like that, because I remember him at Barca more than I do at Arsenal.
Right.
So in my mind, I know he played up top, but he's always been a winger to me.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe I'd say it's a toss-up between either Aguero or Suarez.
Right. Do you know Suarez isn't even in my list? I didn't have him in there.
He's in my list, yeah.
He wasn't around long, but this guy was fucking insane.
Yeah, It was ridiculous, wasn't it?
Oh, Salah scored against West Ham.
Liverpool 1-0 up against West Ham. Still 0-0 in this game though.
Yeah.
For now, it's
It's a cagey game.
I'd probably say Aguero just because he was around a bit longer than Suarez was.
Yeah, I agree.
say-
I had Aguero as
Over
my
Henry.
number 2.
But like I said, in my mind, like I said though, in my mind, Henry's not a striker; he's a winger.
That's
He's not though.
false,
In the if you're on about Premier League strikers, he's definitely a striker.
Yeah, he's definitely
For
a striker.
Arsenal. He was
Yeah.
robbed of the Ballon d'Or when he was a centre forward for Arsenal.
Oh, yeah.
But it's
He
like
should
you
have won
said.
it. Nedved won it.
Yeah,
It's like you
yeah,
said,
definitely.
you can't put Shearer in because you didn't watch Shearer.
That's fair. That's
I didn't
valid
watch
point.
Henry, so
No,
I can't really.
No, that's a valid point. To be fair.
But for me, it's like if you were going to pick, even you, Josh, I'm sure you know how good Henry was to a certain extent. If you were going to pick to have in your team for a season when you needed the most goals, Henry at his peak or Aguero at his peak, who would you pick?
It probably would be Henry, but it's not like a definite.
It's-
Aguero was
I know what you mean.
Similar numbers.
sensational. Like
He
again, Aguero was so injury prone, but the guy was just a bagsman. Like
Mm.
he was a crazy bagsman.
Yeah, and the only difference between Aguero and Henry is that Henry would shy away from big games, whereas Aguero would be the guy for City. He won the league
yeah,
with his
100%.
goal, you know what I mean? So he was. So for me, it was close. I put Aguero second. I didn't put Shearer on my list because I never watched him play. Just like YouTube highlights and stuff.
Yeah, I think for me, so obviously I had Shearer top, I had Henry second, and then
Yeah.
I had Aguero third, to
Yeah.
be fair. So it's all a very similar
Shearer second.
record. I
You,
feel like
you must have. I think you probably watched Shearer when you were watching football, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
people disrespect Aguero a little bit sometimes. They don't seem to have him like at the top of the game. I can't believe that you think Rooney's better than Aguero and Henry, though. That is absolutely mental. There's just no way. But let's move on to number 4. I feel like this is the period. Oh, 3. Are you still
I
on
would
3?
have put Rooney for number 3. Personally.
Rooney third.
Yeah.
I picked Kane, me. I think he's a fucking quality striker.
Yeah.
And he's done it at Spurs.
I mean, he would have broke the record if he stayed.
He was on trajectory to do it, and I'm a little bit gutted that he moved. Really,
He'll be back. Have you seen that they've got that buyback
He'll be
clause?
back.
They put a buyback clause in the sale.
Right.
So they have a clause in there where they can bring him back. So I think he'll be. I mean, I thought he was going to be at Bayern for a few years anyway. I didn't think he was going to retire.
How
at
old is
Bayern.
he?
He's early. He's 30s, yeah. But the thing with Kane though is he's got that Ronaldo in him where he can still play later because he's got a knack for scoring goals.
Yeah.
And because he's that close to breaking the record, I think he'll come back even if it's for a couple of seasons just to break that.
To give it a go.
record.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think he's not exactly relied on his pace as a player anyway,
never
has
has,
he?
exactly.
So that even if he gets a little bit slower, it shouldn't make too much.
He
of
could
a
drop in
difference.
deep and provide play like an almost playmaker role as well.
Really good.
Remember
to
that? Was
watch
it last
play
season?
football
The
as
season
well.
before where he did drop back and he was providing bare assists to like
He's been
Kulusevski
doing that
and
for a couple of seasons.
and
hasn't he?
Son.
But you just put your. Anytime he's 1-on-1 with a keeper, you would just put your house on him scoring.
What was it?
Yeah.
Was it 3 years ago? He led the league in goals and assists.
Yeah, him
Yeah,
and Son had
3
that
years
really good relationship,
Yeah.
didn't they? Where they were both just
I
scoring
think they
or
broke
assisting each other.
Lampard and Drogba's record
Yeah,
of the most
partnership.
goals like assisted by one another. I have Kane 4th, 3rd for me is Suarez.
There you go.
Suarez is third. The thing is, I can't really argue with that. I think my only issue is Suarez wasn't in the Prem for a huge amount of time, but when he was
insane,
mental,
man.
wasn't he?
He was insane. I put Suarez as 4th and
Fourth.
Kane as 5th just because I'm an Arsenal fan.
I had Rooney 4th and Aguero 5th. But special mentions for me would have been Drogba.
Drogba was my
I
honourable
just
mention.
loved
Yeah.
watching Drogba play football.
I think 5th for me and maybe a little bit early, but Haaland.
Do you know what? I have Haaland 4th. I was about to get.
He's only played one season.
Yeah, but
One season, man.
the
Come
guy's
on.
played
Nah.
his first season. And do you know
yeah.
what? To be fair, he is at the best team in the world and probably a team that's going to go down as one of the best Premier League teams to ever be playing together. The guy was here one season and he already broke
smashed it.
He'll be number 1 on that list eventually.
Yeah, that's what I mean, though.
But
You-
right now, I can't put him with that. He's an honourable mention right now.
it depends how long he stays at City because personally, I can't see him staying at City for a long time. Like, I think he'll end up going somewhere else eventually.
I think if you can make an argument for Suarez being on the list, I know he was here longer than Haaland, but Haaland has to be up there already.
I'd say he's an honourable mention just for the fact that he's only been here for one year.
Nah, but
guy's
he,
one season,
no,
you
but
can't-
even
I
in
can't
this,
put him top 5.
in this one season, he's one of the best Premier League strikers of all time. He broke the record for the most goals, and he won the treble.
Yeah, but you're putting him in
He's already-
are
he's-
you putting him in over Aguero? Are
No,
you putting him in over Rooney?
No.
I have Rooney 5th, so I picked Haaland as a better striker than Rooney.
Well, your number one's getting picked over Haaland.
I just think Haaland is more talented. I would, if I was going to pick one of them at their best to be in my team.
I think Rooney's got more talent. Rooney's got more talent than Haaland.
Much better footballer than
Yeah,
Haaland. But
Rooney was
I'll
sick,
say
man.
Haaland is a better goal scorer.
Yeah, and we're talking about strikers. I don't want to play him at cam, so I'd much prefer having Haaland there.
No, but Rooney did get the goals and he was playing in big games and he would get assists as well. And
Yeah, I'm not saying
well in
Rooney's
Champions
bad. I'm just saying I think Haaland's a better out and out striker. The last bit on the top 5 strikers. Obviously, Chris, you gave an honourable mention to Drogba.
Sorry, yeah.
Vardy.
Yeah, Vardy.
Not a bad shout.
Yeah,
Vardy.
yeah.
You know what? He like
Fucking hell, yeah.
the way he got into the top, man, from like Sunday League to
Fleetwood,
Champions League. You know what I mean?
Fleetwood that he played.
Yeah, Fleetwood.
And just the way he played, man, he was so dynamic. He was electric, man. He had something about him. He had this whole aura about him.
I think
Vardy.
he's, like you said, Vardy's journey from the lower leagues to the Premier League is kind of what, when you're a kid in England and you're playing football.
You make a movie about that guy, man. I think you could definitely make him. They have to make him.
They're making a
Are
movie
they?
about him. Yeah,
Sick, I'm
Should have
definitely
been
have to
doing
watch
it
that.
for a little while.
Yeah,
that's the dream, isn't it?
his story is
That's-
just something else, man.
I think another honourable mention is Torres.
Oh,
yeah.
Torres and Van Persie, I would say. As well.
Yeah.
Who?
Torres,
Van
Van
Persie.
I've
Persie.
read of him.
Sure you haven't.
But yeah, the reason why I didn't say Torres is because Suarez outshone him. But them 2 years that he was on top,
He wasn't a top 5 striker, but in his prime years,
in
Torres
his prime years he was,
Torres at
because he was the only guy
Liverpool.
competing with Ronaldo. So like when Ronaldo's trajectory was like when he was getting into his peak, Torres was actually on par with him, and then he got a few injuries and stuff.
I liked
With them a couple of seasons, I think
I liked
Torres
Van
was sick.
Nistelrooy, mate.
I love Van Nistelrooy. I think one of the best finishers I've ever seen play in the Premier League. Finishing wise, just his ability to finish in the box.
I was at school when he played.
I was that's similar to how I look at Torres in terms of when I was first getting into football and watching it week in, week out. Him at Liverpool, he was just incredible. And he made like a generation of kids support a Liverpool team who were actually pretty shit overall still. But it was just, I remember everyone just loved Fernando Torres, and that was the reason that they chose Liverpool as their team.
Yeah, and he was
so good on the ball.
I think he was one of the only players that made Vidic look poor.
Yeah.
Every time he was up, Vidic was a top centre back, one of the best in the Premier League. But up against Torres always had him, mate. Always had him in his pocket.
What you got to say, Josh?
You know, it's true. Like I'm not bad mouthing Vidic because Vidic is a sick centre back. But against Torres, I don't know what it was about Torres. He always had Vidic.
It happens.
He's had him spinning, but.
I think if I've got any other honourable mentions. Do you know, I haven't watched him loads. I've just seen more highlights and stuff. But one player who I always thought, not an out-and-out striker, more of a centre-forward, had a lot of skill about him, Bergkamp. He could always finish, and he has I think he's in the top 10 for assists all time in the
I think
Premier
he was
League.
more like of a shadow striker because in the 90s they had a lot of 4-4-2s and they had one as a shadow striker, which is more like a cam position now.
He was great.
Well, he was sick though.
Yeah.
But he was unbelievable. Like some of the goals that he scored were always in those like top 5, top 10 Premier League goals of all time.
Goal he scored against Newcastle,
With
where he just flicks it round the other way.
It's mental, isn't it?
It's unbelievable. That's the best bit of skill I've ever seen, I think.
What about Andy Cole for United?
I don't.
He
Josh,
scored bare
great
goals,
shout.
that guy, man.
you didn't mention him, and he's I think 3rd or 2nd in the top all-time Premier League scorers.
Didn't watch him.
Calling
So-
yards.
Yeah,
Cole
he does
it
get
out.
overlooked, but he scored bare goals, man. You can't deny that. He just
Wasn't on penalties either. Didn't take many
Was he
penalties.
not?
even more impressive.